Hello and welcome to Middle Age Moto. Today I wanted to dive into my crazy process in selecting a motorcycle, how I selected my Ducati Monster 1200S, why I ended up going with the decision. It was not an easy decision. I drag out everything as far as decision. I'm the kind of guy that if my wife wants to buy a vacuum at Walmart, I've got to research it first, whether it's standing there in the store. I want to get the reviews, and reviews are subject to interpretation. You got to dig in because some people's perception of what the object or the item was supposed to be does not meet their expectations because they didn't research and realize that it doesn't, so they leave a bad review on it. So not all bad reviews would necessarily mean it's bad review. My main reason for reviews is quality. I want to look at the quality. Now, we all know that Ducati doesn't have the best name, or didn't have the best name as far as reliability. So that was something I needed to dig into research. So I'm going to make this a couple parts so that it's not too long. But first of all, what I'm going to go through is the bikes that were in consideration. And I was all over the map. I hadn't been on a bike for probably 7 to 10 years. I was traveling for work. I was living in Florida at the time. I kind of got burned out because the roads were all flat, and I had some other, life things that were going on that caused me not to ride, which I'll get into down the road once I get more subscribers and a little bit of the more detail on that aspect. But the first bike that I noticed that really caught my eye was the Suzuki GSX S, and the non-fairinged, it wasn't the F, the non-fairinged model. I just thought it was a really aggressive looking, really nice looking bike, and that was going to be the bike. I went to my local dealer, I sat on it. I've got a 29-inch inseam, and I was kind of wondering how it would fit. I've said this if it's your first time here. 5'9" and 260 pounds. So I'm not a little guy as far as girth. So, I got a gut to worry about when I'm on the bike. So the more upright position helped. So I went down, I sat on it, I liked it. The bike felt really good. The stance, it came with, a lot of the options that I was looking at. I started doing research on it, and the first place I go is YouTube. And every video on naked bikes, the Suzuki GSX S was not included. It was the Aprilia, the BMW S1000 single S, the KTM Super Duke. Even the Monster wasn't really in there a lot, but the Yamaha MT-10, they were all the bikes that were in these tests. And I was like, well, what's going on with this? So after doing a little bit more research, they're a fantastic bike, don't get me wrong. I live in an area where they don't really allow you to do road tests unless you really beg and plead, so I didn't ride the bike because I was very early on, so I wasn't serious, and until I get really serious, I'm not going to ask to really ride the bike. I've bought a ton of bikes through the years and never ridden them because that's just how it is in the States for some reason. A lot of the dealers where I've lived are not big on test drives, and I can see why. They don't know your experience level and stuff like that. But to stay on task here, so I started doing some research and watching some videos, and there was a YouTuber that had one, and he was out riding the bike and liked it and everything. But it seemed to me that after a while it was more of a budget bike. It was a bike that kind of just got you in, and that was kind of enticing too, because in the very, very beginning, pricing was something that was a concern. I just wanted to keep my pricing in a level because I didn't want to, I didn't want a huge outlay of cash, or a huge monthly payment, whichever way I decided to go. So I started digging in a little bit more, and I've always wanted a Ducati. I've never owned a Ducati, and I've always been a sport bike guy. So I looked at the Ducati line, and they came out with a Super Sport, and it was red. It was gorgeous. It was a little bit more upright. The comfort, the ratings on it comfortable wise were phenomenal. But I said earlier, my weight and my size, and the bike was a little on the small side as far as displacement and horsepower. I'll put the horsepower and the ratings of the bike up here in case someone's interested. But I went to my local dealer, my Ducati dealer, the one that I ended up buying the Monster at, and they showed one online, but when I got there it was sold and they didn't have the bike. So I did an inquiry. The guy gave me pricing on it. It was a lot more expensive than the Suzuki, but it was still a Ducati, and it was there. So I started digging into Ducati because all I knew was the old reputation, where they're fantastic bikes, they're precision, but they're quirky. A lot of problems. They're still on one of the tests that I showed as far as reliability. They're way down on the list. But I also, during my research, found out that Ducati was purchased by Audi Volkswagen. So their quality control was stepped up. They were still built in Italy. They were still manufactured the same way. It's just their quality control was stepped up, and they had a little bit more technology being backed by the bigger companies. So after doing some research, everyone said the power was plenty, but I just felt, I just don't know, because I'm coming from sport bikes. So I started my hunt a little more. And as I said earlier, when I was looking at all the shootouts for naked bikes, I noticed the Yamaha MT-10 and the Suzuki S1000 single R was in there a lot, and the Super Duke. So I looked at the KTMs, and I think it's a phenomenal bike, but it just, at the beginning, the price kind of threw me out of the range. I wasn't really crazy about the color packages that it came in, so I kind of drilled that out. The BMW was a big plus. I really liked the bike. I actually sat on one, and it wasn't uncomfortable, but for me and my girth and that kind of thing, it leaned over more than my Monster does by a little bit, and it just it was kind of dated. The bike hadn't really, it still hasn't, as of today, it still hasn't been changed. Hopefully, you know, it follows suit to the Double R and they bring a new version out, which would really wake that bike up. But I started doing some research. I joined the Facebook forums, I joined the forums online, I did a lot of YouTube videos, and there was a lot of different issues that people were having with them. Now, I know, and before I get blasted in the comments, that the majority of the time when people post stuff, you know, about catastrophic, they want to tell the world about it. So if you look at the numbers of the amount of bikes sold versus the amount of bikes that break, you know, but some of these were engine failures and stuff of that nature, and it was definitely concerning. I almost missed my turn here. So it was kind of concerning. And I looked at the BMW reliability rating, and they're down there by Ducati. So I thought that, you know, you buy a BMW motorcycle, you get a premium bike. And speaking of reliability, my gas gauge just went to 0. And I know I got a full tank of gas, and my gas light is blinking. So, looks like my gas sending unit. So, talk about reliability. This is the first problem that I've had with my bike, and you guys are here to witness it. So, let's continue riding. I am old school with no speed up, with no gas gauge forever. So, I always set my trip gauge so I know that I've got plenty of gas. So, we'll see what happens. Let's actually pull up here, and wow, this is hilarious. I'm talking about reliability of motorcycles, and my gas gauge stops working. The nice thing is I'm working from home now, and I can take this to the dealer. The bad thing is my dealer's an hour and a half away. So it's kind of a pain, and they like to work by appointment. So dropping the bike off is kind of a messed up thing. So let's get through this windy section and Probably just the sending unit or something went bad, causing my gauge not to work anymore. It's great. I know I got gas. Well, so gas, you got a leak in my tank and the gas poured out, but I think I would smell it. This is fantastic. Alright, well, we'll get back to the topic in a little bit here. I'm going to figure out if I can shut the bike off and reset something and get the gas gauge working again. And if not, we'll jump back on topic and roll from there. There's a good chance I'll cut this out, but we'll see what happens. I wanted to always be kind of, you know, a little bit raw, real time. But it's amazing how we're talking about quirkiness. I was just ready to get into the fact that, you know, I was going to say, you know, I've had this bike for a year and I've had zero issues. But, yep, it's not just a simple reset, so. Alright, well, that really stinks. Thank God I'm old school and I basically put my odometer on. Alright, well, let's get back on topic. So we're talking about reliability. Ironic. And I did some research on the Monsters. Now I looked at the Monster and there's two versions. You got the S, which this is. Gets the up Olin suspension and the lighter wheels, better Brimbos, and you know, the standard quick shifter and stuff like that. But it was several $1,000s more. But I just waited and I said, you know, that'll work. But I was still tossing it around. I threw the MT10 in there and I was big time on the MT10. Where I live in Alabama, the dealer is more of, my Yamaha dealer is more of an off-road. He sells a ton of off-road. That's how he stays in business. That's what he basically stays in business with. And he had an MT10 and it didn't sell. I mean, it was there forever. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he actually dealer traded it out. Now I went in there and of course he tried to sell me an MT09 and, you know, other bikes because they want to sell what they have, and he told me that if I wanted to see one, I would have to put a deposit and actually buy it, and then he would get one for me. I wanted to sit on the bike. I had never sat on the bike. And I travel, like I said earlier, so I'm around a lot of Yamaha dealers, and I stopped into a bunch of different Yamaha dealers up in Birmingham, all over, and the MT10 was not something they were carrying. Not that it's not a popular bike, people buy the bike, it's just in this area they've never really stocked it. It wasn't a big draw, I guess. Everyone said, oh, I could get one in here for you, and I was like, you know, I'm not going to commit to, I'm not going to have you bring one in and commit to it. I don't even know if I like the bike ergonomically. So I finally was driving and I saw one parked outside in front of a dealership. So I went over and I sat on it. And I was very, very tiptoed on it. You know, it's balls of the foot are a little bit higher. And I was under the impression that it was more upright than it was. Not that it was bad, to be honest with you. The stance leaning over is very, very similar to my Monster. Very, very similar. I think even my pegs seem to be a little bit higher, if I'm not mistaken. Don't get me wrong, the things are beasts, and that crossplane engine is just a beast. So it was a tough decision. But when I sat on the Monster, it felt like home. You know, you get that feeling when you sit on it, you're like, wow, this fits me very, very, very well. And I was like, wow, this thing is really comfortable. and the seat's adjustable. And if I can be flat foot, I would like to be flat foot. Now my concern was the distance between the pegs and the seat is going to cramp me up, but with the seat on the lower setting, I'm good. And I forget the exact height, but I'll post it up here, what the height is, or the variations, the two different settings. And it's a nice setup the way they do it. There's blocks that are under the seat. You pop those blocks off, and then the seat will drop down, and it's comfy. I'm not going to say this bike is comfortable, but let's get back to the MT10. Did some research in the MT10 the same way. I looked up on forums, and there was 2 or 3 people that had catastrophic engine failures. You know, basically the cranks were breaking, but I heard that the R1 was having the same problem. Again, these things are made by man. Look, my gas gauge isn't working, so things fail. But what concerned me is Yamaha told the dealer for one of these guys that they didn't have, you know, new engines readily available, and they advised the dealer to rebuild the motorcycle. And no offense, I mean, there's some fantastic techs out there, but I've built muscle cars and all that kind of stuff in the past, and I don't want a brand new bike with, you know, I think it was 2,000-3,000 miles on it with a rebuilt engine. I'm out. And multiple guys were stuck doing that, and the amount of time it took to get the parts and rebuild the engine, they were without a bike, and both of them were financed, so they were both paying payments on these bikes. And when I say both, it seems so infinitesimal because it's only really 2 people that I'm really talking about, but there were a couple more. But that was the concern, not the fact that the engine, because you take what you get. You know, the engine does its thing, the engine does its thing. No big deal. As long as I can get a replacement engine, I'm good. You know, you want to put a new engine in, the old engine fell apart, because I don't care what you tell, what you say. If an engine comes apart, it's never going to be the same if you rebuild it. I'm really sorry. Now, maybe you can get new cases. I didn't know how in depth. I don't know the details. I've never built a motorcycle engine, but I just know that there's a lot of precision, really close tolerance parts. That would really concern me. Another thing about the MT10 that kind of turned me off, on the forums, everybody was talking about the brakes. You got to upgrade to Brembo brake pads, or, you know, they're all upgrading to Brembo brakes. And then the suspension. The suspension's a little bit soft. All the road tests were saying that the bike's fantastic, but the suspension is lacking in suspension. Listen, you see how I ride out here. It's not a major deal for me. But if I get on it and I want to really ride hard, I want the feedback, I want premium suspension on my bike. Now, the SP version that they sell in Europe has a better dash. It has a better suspension, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe it has Brembo brakes. Now that's a bike. If they had that version in the United States, it would have been a very, very hard decision. You know, because again, pricing was not going to cap a bike out for me, but I was still trying to be responsible and buy the most bike I could for the cheapest amount of money. And on my list, well, this bike was the most expensive one. Stickers for $17,400, I want to say. So with your freight and fees and all that other tax and everything, you know, you're 19 grand if you were to pay sticker. Now, another thing that swayed me into the direction of this bike, above and beyond of it checking all the boxes other than price, is I got serious in December of 18. Went on vacation for Christmas and made the decision that if they still had this bike in stock when I got back from vacation after New Year's, that I would buy it. So I emailed my sales consultant and said, listen, I'm going to take that bike if it's available after Christmas. Don't hold the bike for me, sell it. I'll jump on a 19 instead of getting an 18 left over. Work me out a deal. And it took him a bit to get his numbers together, and he sent me an email with a really, really, really good deal. A really good deal in my eyes. So I basically went in January when I got back. The bike was still there. He emailed me and said, hey, it's still here. I said, all right, I'll be up. I said, I ended up financing the bike instead of laying, because I got a special financing through it's actually through Volkswagen, which is kind of funny. So it shows up on your credit as a Volkswagen loan, and it looks like a car loan. It's pretty cool. They got the financing submitted. I said, all right, that works for me. Finance guy called me. I said, that works. And of course he said, I got a couple $1,000s more approved for you, so if you want to put some extras on or buy some different stuff. So I guess what we're going to do is I'm going to wrap up this version, or this episode, and I will pick this up in another video. But before I roll out, I just want to say thank you for spending this much time on my video. I hope you heard something that you like. I would love to have you subscribe and like the video. I want to get this channel growing enough that I have a decent little audience, that I know that I'm actually speaking to people and there's some interaction in the comments. I'm looking forward to that. Good, bad, or indifferent. I want input. To be honest with you, this is my first GoPro camera. This is first mounting to a helmet. My first time editing videos. There's a lot of firsts. First wiring the mic. I did a lot of research before I bought the stuff that I bought, and I'll do a video on the equipment and editing stuff that I use once I get rolling a little bit more. But right now I'm no professional, and I'm no professional in any area. So please don't ever take it like that. I'm an average guy that basically just has a real love for motorcycles.